I am joined again by Laure Jackson. Hello, Anne.
Hello, it is great to be here. Thank you.
Do you know, every day's learning day. I just remembered when I first met you, I thought, is it Anne? Is it Anne Laure? Is it hyphen? Is it Laure Jackson? Is it Anne Laure? And now I know to say hello, Anne. So, we do learn and we remember things and we start to develop and do better.
Isn't that lovely? And the simplest things make such a difference. It's lovely.
It makes me very happy for sure. I'm easily made a smile. Right now, we have been working through last year 25 through rather than just sort of thinking about something and delving into it in one way. We've flipped a little bit, and we're taking a venue or a scenario or a situation, and how do we apply sensory health into this one? So we've done sensory healthy schools or offices or nighttime sleeping or whatever it is. So I have another one for us today, which seems relevant because let's face it, we're coming towards the end of January now. New Year's resolutions for 99% of people are so last year they've forgotten what they were. So, sensory healthy New Year's resolutions.
Oh.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have a question for you as well if I can find it. But
Okay, yeah, because
right,
as you say, New Year's resolutions for me, that's kind of like, when was that again? Like,
yeah, exactly. So, New Year's resolutions, but sensory healthy ones.
yes.
How would we do that?
Well, if we are going to, I have a two-pronged attack on that one. It's how to honor other people going into the new year,
Hmm.
and then also what to do for yourself so that you can live in the very best sensory health for this year coming. And that is pause, take a step back, take stock of the life that you are living at the minute and celebrate and pay attention and write down those things that you absolutely, absolutely love. The way that you spend your time, how much time you spend doing something, and break it down. What I love to do is as an occupational therapist, is task analysis. That's one of the things that we spend ages being trained in, is how do you look at a topic, how do you look at an activity and break it down into all the different components that it takes socially, emotionally, cognitively, i.e. how much you have to think about what you have to do, how much you have to sequence it, how much does your body have to get engaged? Does it take fine motor, little tiny skills, or is it big, gross motor movements if you're going for a walk? Does it take balance? And so, yeah, we literally go through every single activity and every single thing that we do as humans and break it down and look at all the various components. So that is the broad sweeping desire and just prayer for everybody going into this new year. Have a look at your life and have a look at the activities that you really love to do and take a few minutes to analyze, do I like that because it's really social? Or do I like that because it meets my sensory needs? Or do I like that because, and break it down and look at it and fill your life with as much of that good activity level, that good sensory experiences, all of that stuff to feed you to live in the very best sensory health for 2027.
Because it's easy to have all these thoughts. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But we actually do need to be cautious of other people. I guess there is an element of being cautious of how aggressively we might make a U-turn in our life. As you know, as Christians, we think, well, when you become a Christian, there's some big U-turns, but they're never actually aggressive. They're very gently done because God's involved. But U-turns in terms of what people think of us, expect of us. You can't just decide the 1st of January, right? That's it. I'm quitting my job. It doesn't work that way. There needs to be a follow through. Do you really need to lose your job? Change job. Perhaps that might be a thing. But actually, we need to be cautious of how aggressive we are at changing something because actually that can be quite detrimental to us. And like I say, thinking of others.
And that too, it's really interesting when I consider myself as a businesswoman and the things that I have to do and the decisions that I have to make and how quickly I do need to make them. And so I'm very quick at pivoting when I need to. I'm very quick at hearing something and deciding, yes, I'm going to do that, or no, I'm not, or how much am I going to do this? There's a lot of that immediate decision making that needs to happen. But when it comes to me personally, and I think for most of us, I think it's what you were saying, that it is that gradual transition into a new way of doing things that is not only going to be easier on our systems, easier for those around us that we live with, and easier for things to stick longer term. We came into the new year. I actually think I was talking about 2027. Apologies for those who are not yet in 2027. I was talking about being in the best sensory health for 2026. I can tell where my brain is at. But yeah, we decided to do a Daniel fast and talk about quick transitions. It was only like the couple of days before that we thought, right, okay, let's do this. And then there was one of our family members that thought, actually, I'm really not sure if I do want to do that. All the others did. So that talk about like a quick transition. We all transitioned and flicked into this. And then when there was one family member who really wasn't up for it, so it was just like, oh, right, okay, we have to learn how to negotiate what we then did and how we fasted and what food was in the household. Because for the rest of us, we didn't want half of the cakes and the whatever else in the household, but we did want to honor the other person who didn't want to actually do it fully. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Transitions, making quick decisions can be so helpful in certain circumstances. But if you're doing anything, if you're changing anything that is going to affect anybody else, then yeah, there is a process that we need to go to for it to be the best and the most successful for everybody.
Two questions. One, what's a Daniel fast? I actually haven't heard of this.
Oh, well, there's two. Well, there's the first one is the 10 days. When Danny was speaking, he said, "Look, I don't want to eat any of the meat. I don't want to eat any of this. Come and test me. Come back to me in 10 days' time and just see what I'm like."
Oh, the
And
meat and the veg, that one.
yeah, the meat and the veg, that one. Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
pulses and grains, no sugars, no nothing processed, nothing offered to any idols, nothing offered anything else. It's just purely, yeah, pulses and grains and natural foods, effectively, and water. So I think there are various variations of it, but yeah, that's where we were at.
I love that story in the Bible where it was wasn't it it was food uh sacrifice for idols, wasn't it?
There was
And
part, yeah, there's various, yeah.
and so the guys who knew Christ said, we're not taking that, we're not writing that. But in order to do what they were supposed to do, they had to eat the meat. That's how you get stronger and bigger and tougher. And they knew that God said, I don't want you to eat that meat because that's bad. So they ended up eating vegetables only. I love how God can defeat physics. I love it because they got stronger, bigger, fitter. They look better, not eating meat, which it's protein. We know, medically, biologically, protein is one of the best ways, not the only way, the best ways to make muscle. You want to get muscle? You need protein. People don't even eat meat now. They have powder. How boring is that? Anyway, we know that meat is good. So actually that story is great, but fasting can be hard. It's not for everybody. Some people do need to be cautious. You do need to listen to your doctor. I listened to Richard Scott, who said, Andy, I'm not sure you should be doing that on those meds. So I don't. And I have tried, but if I don't eat, the meds interact in my system in such a way that it doesn't end well. So I don't fast in that way.
Yeah.
I really miss fasting. I used to fast twice a week. Now I never do, under sensible, righteous advice.
Yeah.
I'd like to do it again in the future. But the thing about fasting is, if people don't know you're doing that, I was thinking about your family, and you've got a family member who comes home for the weekend. No one's told them the rest of the family are fasting, and they come home, they start making a fry up with some bacon and sausages, and what's the problem? What's the problem? Because it's important to bring people into what we're doing. But fasting is an interesting one because the Bible says that when we do that, we're not supposed to talk about, hey, look at me, I'm fasting.
Yeah.
We're supposed to do it secretly. So in the past, I always had a pack of mints because if you don't eat, your breath gets a bit smelly. So I used to pack of mints if I'm meeting someone, so they wouldn't possibly know. And I try not to have meetings around food time, so there's no possibility of them knowing, because that was important to me. But it's the importance that I think this example brings of bringing others with you and the changes you're making, even something as simple as a part fast or a day fast. Joe and I used to do a 2/3 fast because the boys would get upset if we didn't have dinner with them. So we'd fast breakfast and lunch, have dinner with the boys. It's the heart, right? That's what God's after. So, but it's interesting if you don't mention what you're doing to somebody, trying to be all sensible because God's asked you to not make a big fuss of it, but somebody locally who probably needs to know starts making a bacon butty, that's not going to be very conducive to your fasting.
No. And that is a really delicate balance. You're absolutely right, because I think someone came around to the house. There was one point we have every couple of weeks, we have people around, about 20 odd people to come around for food at ours on a Sunday. And And there was one of those occasions when I was actually in a pretty strict fast, and I was really caught because somebody was asking me something, and I thought I don't want to tell you that I'm fasting because that can sound really pompous or that can
Mhm.
sound as though you're doing it for a purpose. But I actually really want to let you know that no, I don't want this. But it's not. I don't want to offend you by not having what you've brought because it's kind of bringing share. And it was just like I'm fasting, and then someone turned around and, and turned around and said, "Oh, you're not supposed to say that you're fasting." I just thought, oh no, I just had that internal dialogue as to, oh, do I say something or do I not? And then somebody else says, oh, but you're
Yeah.
not supposed to say. And I thought, oh no, make me feel bad as well as like. But it is a tricky one. But within our household, it's the spirit of the law, isn't it? And it's the heart with which you're doing things. And it's like there's sometimes it's really wise to tell people what you're doing. And there was when I first started fasting as well, I did say to people around me, I says, I'm not sure how this is all going to go because fasting is new for me and I might be a bit grumpy. I didn't know how I was going to be at all. And literally when I was starting, yeah, I wasn't the most gentle because it changes. It changes lots of things and it does bring up lots of things to the surface. And now I absolutely love fasting and how it's built a strength in me and a humility and a strength in God. It's like it's grown over the years as I've developed the fasting. Sorry, we're going completely into a completely different area, but it's like, yeah, God is amazing how he does things.
You see, my presenters will be laughing, saying, "Oh, he's gone off on a tangent." It's not a tangent; it's relevant and pertinent. But this is the thing about fasting. I've done 7 day fasting in the past, and the thing is, you get to if I miss a meal, I get hungry. That's not exactly a surprise. If I miss several days of food, it does change, and all of a sudden you don't because you get ultra sensitive, and then that sensitive kind of wanes off a little bit. So I always drink more water. I would always have hot drinks because if I fast, I get very cold very quickly. It's just one of my things. So I have hot drinks. And someone said, oh, you can't fast if you're having milk. Who says that? Where's that in the Bible? But actually, that's how I get through it the best. So nobody notices because drinking a cup of tea is normal, right? Because we're British, we're English. I'm an Englishman. I drink tea. I drink coffee mostly now, but it's not the point. But I think fasting is an interesting one because initially, if we don't eat, we struggle, and then it gets more normalized for us. And in the same way with our senses, when something changes quite dramatic, and let's face it, not eating on purpose is quite a big thing. When that happens, all of a sudden, our heightened senses then start to drop over time as it becomes more normalized. In the same way that we become desensitized to a noise or a light or a fabric or a piece of paper, which is one of the stories you told me last year, which still baffles me that some poor soul couldn't hold a piece of paper in their hand because of how it felt to their skin. And they were being told basically, oh, your child's really disobedient and naughty in school. No, they just can't hold paper. Take that problem out. Now they're a great student. And that's why I like these, because we're informing people of some things that I would never have thought holding a piece of paper could stop you learning. Because why can't you hold a piece of paper? It's such an, of course you can, don't be stupid. Actually, no, there's a sensory issue here, over processing for
Yeah.
for what they're feeling. So yeah, I don't think we're on a tangent at all. I think this is
And
important.
I've just realized that because it changed my interoception. Now, interoception is a sense that we don't often talk about. It's about that internal awareness. So if somebody needs to go to the loo, the reason why children can be hard to potty train, uh, it helps. Some people won't like exercise because we can feel our heartbeat, and therefore the feeling of the blood pulsing around the body is just really not pleasant, quite uncomfortable. But interoception is also the feeling of hunger. So I never used to like feeling hungry. It was one of the worst things ever. I mean, I was well fed as a child, so I don't know why I have such a negative reaction to feeling hungry. But anytime I felt even a tad hungry, I would eat. So I've always been a little bit plumper. That's just part, and that's absolutely fine. But it was always because I didn't like feeling hungry. So I would always eat. I would always have something, or I would always eat just in case I was going to feel hungry. So this is why fasting was a particularly important thing, I think, for me to do because to know that I could feel that hunger, it's like feeling the fear and do it anyway. Feel the hunger and just pray through it, and you'll be okay. And then over time, my actual sensitivity to feeling hungry has decreased, which for me has been an absolute brilliant byproduct almost of fasting. Some people won't have that consequence. It won't affect some people, but for me, it did, whether that be a God thing that he's done that to my internal sensations to help me and to make me more secure, or whether that was just a physiological result of what I have been doing over time. But interoception isn't a sense that we often talk about, and we don't treat it in the same way that we do the other seven senses. And smell is also a little bit different, but we can help. We help all those senses, and all of those senses impact how well we feel, how coordinated we are, how calm, how grumpy, going back to the whole eating thing, how well we sleep. It's so, yeah, even fasting does have a quite a significant sensory impact too on interoception.
And perhaps New Year's resolution, bringing it to that question, might be right. I'm going to start fasting this year for a half day or one a day, a week, or whatever. And what I like about the whole approach to fasting from a Christian perspective, it isn't a religious thing. It's not like you have to do it. I don't think it's wrong for you in a group of people to say, "Oh, sorry, I can't have that. I'm fasting," because the Bible actually says, "Don't go around making a big point about it with sackcloth and ashes and wailing and gnashing of teeth." Actually, just says, "Don't make it obvious." Is a simple way of putting that. And actually, you wouldn't. But when someone directly interacts with you and says, "Oh, do you want a piece of cake?" No, I'm fasting. Is it much easier than saying, "No, thank you." And then they're starting to think, "Don't like my cake. You had it last week. I knew there was something wrong with you. When I came in the door, you didn't look at me. And now you don't want me cake because you don't like it." We're just trying to help people out so they're not
Yeah.
going to places that we don't need. That's not our brain.
Yeah, absolutely. You just imagine that's exactly what people would think if you didn't explain. That was my reasoning too. Thank you, sir, for just affirming my choices on that one.
I fasted for a long time. I remember, well, wow, mid 90s was the first 7 day fast I ever did, which
Mm,
was for Joe for a job that she was going for. And you don't fast to get what you want. I think it's just relevant to touch on that. Fasting isn't
yeah,
a way of making God sure know that you definitely want this. What
no.
it is us turning our hearts back to God and saying, okay, we want to remove some of the distractions from our life in order to focus on you more. It's not a way of getting what you want, which is I've heard taught. That's not what it's about. But I prayed for 7 days for Joe to make sure that she was in the best place that she could be,
Mhm.
that God would open the doors that were right. And if it wasn't wrong for her, because it was quite a big career thing, actually that it wouldn't happen. That's what my prayer was for fasting.
Mm,
But what the advantages I found from fasting really big, 5 days, 7 days, whole days, is it helps my mind clear of all the rubbish and the clutter that you think through in order to be more able to hear what God might be saying. I remember I was going for jobs at one point. This is the story I wanted to show you. And at one point, I was so successful in my applications. I think I had like 7 or 8. Yes, we want to interview you over like 4 day period. There were like all these 7 or 8 interviews. And I thought, well, I can't go to all of them. They're all quite interesting and good. I sort of hope that if I applied and didn't get one, that was a nice no. And if there was an interview, then great, that's where I should go. I had like 7, 8 interviews thinking, I literally can't attend. I can go to maybe 4. So I knew I had to say no to some of the interviews. So the first step was, can I reschedule? Nope, this is dead set in stone. You rebook it or anything. Fine, okay. Then I had to pray about which ones I got rid of, and we did that through fasting. So we fasted, I think it was for maybe 48 hours or something,
mm,
until we had an answer, and the answer was peace about which ones not to go for. Now it
mm,
didn't change the outcome of what I got in the end. I actually didn't go for any of those jobs. It's not the point. It's about quieting our own heart by
mm.
getting rid of some of the noise and the clutter and the distraction, which feeds perfectly into these conversations, because it's all about how can our senses be sometimes desensitized in order for us to function. How can I make a better decision about 8 interviews when there's too much noise in my mind? Right,
Mhm.
fasting helped me to calm my mind, in order to hear from God better. And I remember lying on the bed with Joe. We just finished a prayer, like on our knees. We just sort of lay opposite each other on the bed, and just this wave of peace of, I know which ones to get rid of. I know which ones not to apply for. And it's
Mm.
fasting that enabled me to really think that properly without the clutter and the noise, which is what you do for people sensitively with their senses, because you're helping them to not hear senses that perhaps aren't that relevant. But it feels, doesn't it? Sometimes those that they feel more than they are.
Yeah, they do. They really do. Whether it be the sights or the sounds or the sense of touch, movement experiences, or they're not getting enough. So they're
Mm.
that zoned out from the world that they're not getting this enough input into their senses for them to actually register what is actually going on and how to move forward in life, because they're almost like that blank, that dulled about it all. and they just need more sensory input to be able to pay attention to what is actually in front of them and to be able to make good choices that way. So yeah, it works both ends, work both ways, just calming things down, decluttering everything on so many different levels, or adding stuff in. And for me, the interesting thing was the fasting element, because it's the first time this year that I heard about actually water fasting within the Daniel fast. Normally you fast and you have water or decaffeinated if you're not just going purely natural. But this was a no water during the day, and I wasn't sure if I could do that at all. And I thought, but Lord, okay, this is the year of much more of surrendering. And it's like, help me to be in a position where I am surrendering and I am as dependent on you, as consciously dependent on you as I can be. So that this year, what you want to do with me, where you want to take the business, where you want to use what you've created me to do and to be, that I am so sensitive to, and I'm fully in that place. So yeah, that was a new one, also going with that water. And I was utterly surprised at how well my brain was functioning and focusing. And it was very, very focused. So yeah, during no water, and then having for certain periods of the day, through the night and through the day, and then evening meals was the greens and the natural foods. It was an amazing experience.
Often I ask you a question and I just sit and listen to you and take in what you have to say. Sometimes I ask you a question, didn't realize I had so much to say on it. Just, semi apology. But that's the way it goes, right?
Oh, it is. No, this is what we're here for. This is what we're here for.
Now, I actually do have a question which I'm going to feed into this. So this is from Joe and I from Family Focus a while back. We were talking about fast-paced TV shows on films. I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but it came up again because you went to the cinema. Moving to different scenes really fast, and we were talking about how this may affect our sensory health. And Joe said, "What are your thoughts?" And Lord Jackson, I'm going to have the same question to Richard Scott, more specifically about dopamine, which is one of the reasons why, especially children's cartoons, half a second scenes, because it's trying to get you addicted. But from a sensory healthy perspective, we went to the cinema, which is great. Someone gave us a gift. We can go to the cinema, which is brilliant. And we watched a film. Now, the film itself was wonderful. Zootropolis 2, love that film. But there were obviously adverts before, and only one of the adverts, because it's basically a PG film, was a cartoon. And I actually had to look away from the screen because it's enormous. Okay, so cinema's a totally different experience from the lounge. I don't care how good your surround sound system is, it's not a cinema. And it was very loud, very big, and that's part of the experience of what we went for. However, one advert literally was the thing I've heard about and never actually physically seen myself. Half a second, every single half a second, a new scene. And this went on for about, 45, 50 seconds. And I had to look away because I felt physically sick by how fast it's moving, because I now feel like I'm being brainwashed because it was so short and so quick. I've got no clue what I'm physically seeing and I can't take it in. And the physiological response was a bit of nausea, had to turn my face away. I thought, oh my goodness, children will be watching this. What must this be doing to their senses?
Yeah, it is huge. It is massively significant. Our eyes are like, we perceive things through our eyes in particular. In the cinema, yes, we do have auditory stuff as well, but it is primarily a visual feast. But that speed in which the brain does not have time, it doesn't have time to process. We do have remarkably, there's nothing on the planet that can process the way that ours can. I mean, you might think ChatGPT is getting close, but it's like it analyzes very different things. Our brains are utterly, utterly unique on Earth. Phenomenal things. But to get that input and to make sense of it all that quickly, it's not our innate design. It isn't, because the exhaustion or the things that you experienced, the way that, because vision feeds into the vestibular system, vision feeds all kinds of areas of the brain, and there's a mismatch in the amount of information that is coming from and the time that we normally take to process that information, to give a proper output, to respond to it well. But when you're being bombarded by this visual stimulation all the time, possibly interlinked with your auditory, there is no capacity, there is no space and the brain is just going into overload and overwhelm. So some people would get angry with that. For you, it was the nausea. Other people would do other things. Very wise to put your eyes down, or to divert from it. But sometimes, even if it's more flashes, then the light will still go through our eyelids because they are not blackout. They're not blackout blinds, our eyelids. That's an interesting thought for, there we go, sleep design. We could even have something for the lids, never mind about a face mask, for people can't cope with those things. You could just have literally something over the eyelids to make that, and that you could blink with them. That'd be handy. But so for epilepsy, the type of epilepsy that's induced by the vision and lights, the photosensitive, then that still goes through the eyelids. So you can't. Some people just can't even pull away from it. So I really think that there should be limits, the same way that now there are limits on certain exposure, certain heights of sounds and certain visual things, but not enough. And actually, it was in a cinema in a Japan where they actually did what they were doing with what they'd created in the films, and there was 100 children that went to hospital, all having epileptic seizures,
No.
because of what had happened in the cinema in Japan. I can't remember the year. I've got it written down. It's in my Sensory Healthy Church program,
Wow.
because that was it was serious, and they put some limitations in then, but maybe they need to make sure that the limitations go to other things now that we're capable of doing with our technology.
That's disgusting. That's terrible. How? Yeah.
People
And
didn't know. Yeah, it was, I think it was actually having different colors together, in those in lines. I'll have to go back and look at
hmm.
it. But yeah, it was massively significant, and it caused, laws to be changed.
Can we bring that out for the whenever we chat next? Because I think we need to talk a bit more on this.
Right.
We were watching the sitcom Friends. We're just working through a box set over tea normally, and I was watching the scenes. Having come back from the cinema, we just put on a bit of Friends over some food. We don't like to watch a film or something. If we're going to have like a sofa dinner, we want something short so we can eat our dinner and do something else. And I was like, oh, this is wonderful. Just the scenes that someone's actually gone to the trouble of setting up a scene, and it's not just okay, here's a picture, and the tiny bit of movement. It was scenes that were set, and there were people coming in and doors closing, and it was almost soothing to watch relative to the advert that I'd seen earlier that day,
Yeah.
when it was so fast. And of course, if it's that quick, if you see strobe lighting, there'll be a warning. The following production may contain strobe lighting. Some viewers might find this, a really bad idea. So you get strobe lighting, and we know that if it's that sort of flashing, it could be bad for some people. Now, I'm not affected by that at all. Some will be. That's fine. But when you've got scenes that are doing that, it's bordering towards strobe lighting, which is clearly what that Japanese situation, I guess inadvertently, not deliberately, we assume,
No.
created, that generated the same effect of strobe lighting on somebody because it was too much, too fast for too long.
Yeah. 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 That's exactly it.
Wow, that's actually genuinely terrifying.
Mm.
I
And
mean,
that's the thing, because it was inadvertent as well. And it's
yeah,
just like, it's one thing I mean, you have planned torture, and people know how to really hurt somebody,
mm,
and that's horrible. But it's when people do it because they think they're being creative, or they think they're being this, or they think because we've got to deal with all of these lower attention levels and things like this, but actually we are not helping the situation.
no,
And the ease and the pace of a scene of normal life. So these programs that are not normal life, hopefully, Friends, we want Friends, but not perhaps the way that the Friends were. But it's that normality. That's what we
yeah.
want. We need that. We will always function better in that flow, that natural design of interaction and flow, and we speak normally in a certain way. We don't really speak really fast all the time, and it's just, but that would be just too much for our brains to focus and concentrate on. And that there is a norm that is a norm for good reason.
Now we've been chatting for, I just did the maths. It's about 10. It's nearly half an hour, 35 minutes or something. I've lost track now, about 30 minutes. But you're not giving me a different scene and view of you that's changing every half a second. And it's quite a nice, relaxed conversation. We can converse. There are little pauses. There's movement of the hands. It's not static, but actually it's quite pleasant because we can have a conversation. I was sitting looking at Stephen the other day having a chat. thinking about the cinema and thinking, I'm not jumping around the room in 150 different positions as he is to have a conversation. We sit and we talk. It's not complicated. But if this is where TV is going, I mean, I don't know. It can't be good. And I've said this before and it seems relevant, but I remember I was scanning through microfilm for a school project, literally just scanning paper after page after paper page after paper page from the local newspaper. And for weeks afterwards, I was regurgitating some of the stuff I'd seen that had been locked into my brain that I had no conscious memory of until someone said something. And the story I always trot out with is, oh, yes, there was a girls' high in Wolverhampton. It's a girls' school. Oh, yes. And of course, a Chinook helicopter landed on that place at such and such a date for such and such a reason. And I thought, I didn't know I knew that. People around me said, where did you drag that from? And I didn't know. And I realized after a bit, I'd seen it in a microfilm thing. I wasn't looking for that. I was looking for a very specific type of news story that just scanned. I didn't read it. And yet I got all sorts of data and details and events from that article that I never read, that I scanned for perhaps quarter of a second in a huge full newspaper page, which demonstrates the power of the brain and why we need to be so careful about what goes in.
Absolutely. It's the being careful of what goes in. It's do not have TV on in the background. That's just always one of my things, because you just don't know what is being portrayed, what is being shown. Consciously watch, what you take in through your eyes, your ears, your senses. For sure.
We've had this chat with Adam Holtz from Plugged In when we're looking at movie and book and game reviews. But he talks about always be very careful. If there's laughter or especially tears in a film or music or whatever, it doesn't matter what you're watching, listening. He said you need to be really more guarded at those moments, because laughter, we can allow things and accept things that we don't like into our minds. Yeah. Tears, even more so. When you're crying because they've emotively got you crying. So those are when we have to be even more careful, especially as parents, which is the perspective we talk about. You need to be more careful as parents what's going in at that moment that you're crying, because it sort of passes all of our normal filters and it just goes in. If I can remember about a Chinook landing at a girls' high school in Wolverhampton in the 80s or 90s, whatever it was, having never read that but scanned it for a quarter of a second, what could be going in? And then we think back to senses, New Year's resolutions, and bring it back to that. It could easily be, right, I'm going to make sure my children have less screen time on the tablet or the computer or the TV. I'm going to make them throw a ball more or go outside more. And that's great. That might be a New Year's resolution. But again, perhaps being really super aggressive with changing that may actually initially cause more problems, even longer term problems, because a bit like the fasting, you didn't just go full cold turkey and not eat and drink for 4 weeks. That's not what you do. You build it up slowly. You build up a tolerance, I guess, or you slowly desensitize the thing. I mean, that to me is, when I've heard you before, that's how you work with anybody who's presenting to you with an over processing sensory issue.
Yeah. When it comes to sensory health, I have one particularly what I would call an aggressive treatment. It is absolutely brilliant, but that's the only thing that I do. It's something we use the skin system to really calm it down when it's been really, it hates tags and seams and socks and being touched, and it's really not a nice place for that person to be in. So there is something that I will say, look, if you're up for it, we're going to aggressively do this for the next 2 weeks, and it is like, we are going to do this, and we can change lives beautifully, at the end of it. But with everything else, it has to be within that flow, within a way of being that really honors who they are, and that change is difficult for everything, and that we will help the system to integrate better over time, because then it's just a lot less stressful for everybody around, for anybody helping that person, and for that person itself or themselves to be able to cope well with new things that are being introduced, that hopefully they really love them. But it also takes a while to get the right fit and to find the right activity that's going to be the right fit with their sensory thumbprint, which is how we assess and find out who somebody actually is.
Coming back to where we started with New Year's resolutions, I think this conversation has been very varied and flowing, quite fun. But actually, I think it really does affect, because New Year's resolutions, it's when we want to change something. Okay, it's a new year. The calendar has changed from 25 to 26, 26, 27, whatever. We want to do something different. We want to cut this out, or we want to introduce this, or what have you. But it is important that we assess it. I find it fascinating throughout all the treatment that you can offer. There's only one thing that's quite an aggressive thing, but you're saying over 2 weeks, which to me is not aggressive. Aggressive is right. We'll fix this in the next half a minute. 2 weeks to me is actually pretty gentle,
Oh, well, there you
relatively.
go. Well, I'm just thinking of all the parents who, if they've been with me and they know what I'm talking about, they'll be like, "Ha!" But it's every hour and a half for 2 hours, every hour and a half to two
Oh,
hours
okay,
for 2 weeks that they have to do. It's only 5 minutes that they have to do something, but it's a very intentional. Right, I have to do this. We have to reprogram. We have to reset. We are changing the nervous system. We're yeah. So, but.
fine. That's why you do what you do and I don't. Yes, it's no problem. It's easy. No, not necessarily. Just come back to New Year's resolutions. I think when we want to change something in our life, I think one of the things you said at the start, which I think is really important, is you need to bring others with you. Kind of how I would word that. You can't just go off on one. Maybe there's a need to do that. Sometimes that's important. But actually, for the general rule of thumb, actually, we need to bring people with us. And if we're going to say, right, we're cutting out this from our diet, we're going to cut caffeine out. Your family, if you drink lots of caffeine, can I just warn you, your family will need to know you're not drinking lots of caffeine now, because you will almost guaranteed change quite dramatically. Tiredness, grumpiness is probably going to happen. Headaches, physical symptoms. If you're on like 10 coffees a day non-stop, it's like chain smoking, but with caffeine, chain drinking or something. When you suddenly cut out the caffeine, it can cause some problems. As good as that might be, smoking, aggressively stop, yes. If you want to stop smoking, stop smoking. That's a good thing. But there are other things like caffeine, for example, which I know a lot of people get to the new year. That's it. I'm not going to drink caffeine now. Caffeine's okay. Actually, Richard and I have talked about this many times. Caffeine is really good for you in many, many ways. But let people know what you're doing. One, so they're not taken completely off guard. Two, so they can support you. Don't do it on your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. I think the value of community, the value of being, that's the whole point why we're putting families, whether it be a biological family or an adoptive family or a spiritual family, or we have connection. We're all part of something. Even your workplace, it is a sense of belonging. It is a connection. It is a point where other people know who you are. You're not walking around the streets and nobody knows who you are. You have these places of belonging, and they're those places for support. They're the places for encouragement. And if you're not getting that in those places, well, then go and find somewhere that will, because there are plenty of places that will support you on whatever level and whatever it is you'd like that support for.
Which feeds nicely into me saying, and if people want support from you for sensory health, they can do so. You can go to our website. We'll link you to Anne, www.pure247radio, pure247radio.org/ALJ, and we will connect you to Anne Laure Jackson of Sante on Jersey. Thank you as ever, Anne. I have especially enjoyed this chat today.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you indeed.